Said Jim was her Thanksgiving baby, and our grandma always said Thanksgiving has good weather. Christmas, not so much. And I'm so glad they were both right. Today would have been Jim's 78th birthday. He transitioned to continue his spiritual journey exactly 4 months ago, July 17th, passing in his sleep after a long, painful struggle with many devastating illnesses. Throughout the past 5 years, he had the support and devotion of his loved ones. And for more than 2.5 years, his daughter-in-law Claire was his primary caregiver in everything he needed. He loved her very much and always said she was the daughter he never had. They had a very close bond, and it went both ways. I'm so glad Jim was with his loved ones, including his cat Fuzzy Paws, who still misses him. I think all of the Wagner siblings are cat people.
Yep.
Jim lived an enormously interesting life. He served in the Air Force and was in Vietnam, a farmer in Klamath Falls, Oregon, and also worked as a plumber. Jim and his family spent 10 years in Alaska. He worked on the pipeline and all the way north to Kotzebue, where he sent us a picture of the Kotzebue forest, a single tree. Jim and family had many adventures and made a lot of friends with the Native Americans. During that time, we didn't have much contact with him, but in one of those serendipitous times that can't be explained, Jim became a Baha'i, as did Pierre and our beloved late sister-in-law Eileen. Without knowing, Jim had also become a Baha'i. Jim and Valerie traveled to where the spiritual leader of that faith had lived, and while praying in a temple there, Jim had an experience where he saw an enormous golden aura around Baha'u'llah. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Baha'u'llah, okay.
Very good.
And who, of course, was in another realm. His aura apparently extended quite a bit ways more than what we sometimes think of auras. I wish I had listened better. Jim made friends and charmed people with his personality wherever he went. And when he moved back to Southern California, he enjoyed taking our dad on long car rides in the afternoons. Always a closeness. They bonded even more. Jim and I also took up tennis during this time until my son Brian, who had broken his collarbone, still played with his non-dominant hand and still beat us every time. But lots of fun though. Jim's life experiences continued with ups and downs, mostly ups, and he became close to our brother Jerry when he moved to Florida. Eventually, Jim moved back to Oregon to be close to his sons and live out his life. That's when his spiritual growth really deepened. He discovered Quest Haven, Flower Newhouse, Blake, and so many others. On one of his trips from Quest Haven back to Oregon, he drove straight through some 700 plus miles, not stopping to sleep. He was by himself, and he played CDs of Flower's talks and sermons, his favorite being one about angels. He was so enthralled he didn't get tired, and he said it almost felt like he was in another space. During this 5 years, Jim was able to reconnect with his best friend from high school, and after getting together and reminiscing, Jim was able to share with his friend, another Jim, some of his insights and knowledge and spiritual growth and his love of God, Jesus, and his angels, and introduced Jim Waddell to the Bible. Also during this 5 years, I had the wonderful opportunity to know my brother as much more than my little brother. He shared his insights, knowledge, experiences with me and others. I can't tell you how much I came to treasure those talks. He tried to prepare me that he would be leaving soon, but I didn't listen with my heart until it became so hard to know how much he was struggling with his pain and so many limitations. It was a continual slowdown with many trips to the hospital and long stays in rehab. Every time I would call him, there were so many nurses, aides, and even a doctor or two who wanted to hear what he had to share. Even in his weakened state, people were drawn to him and would listen about guidance and his angels. Lots of interruptions trying to talk to him. Claire spent many hours with Jim by his bedside during hospital stays and rehab stays. They bought a house together that they all loved, and Dave, his son, adapted Jim's room to accommodate his needs, making sure everything was within his reach and comfortable. He remodeled the bathroom, got him a new bed, etc. Jim loved living with Dave and Claire. It became so hard for him to remain cheerful and upbeat. He just wanted to go home. And that's just what he did on the night of July 17th. He was asleep and passed at home in his own bed. But that's not the end. I think all of us felt his presence in many ways. Mine was still waking up at 3 a.m. and wishing we could talk a bit more. That was our time because we would usually both be awake then. Pierre's experiences with Jim were on a deeper spiritual level, and she could tell you about him. While, as Jim said, I closed myself off, and I guess that's true. But I still learned. My cats still wake me up around 3, even with the time change. So I always say hi to Jimmy. The portrait of Jesus that he gave to several of us sits where I see it every time I'm at my computer or watching TV. Frequently I notice things about the portrait that I hadn't noticed before. I say hi to it, and it makes me feel happy. I thank the Lord, the universe, for being born into the same family with Jim, and I'm so glad we had him for nearly 78 years. I have lots of fond memories with Jim and Valerie when we were young and newly married. Lots of adventures. Melvin shares those memories too. He always asked me how Jim was doing, and by the same token, Jim would always ask me the same thing, how's Mel? I'm very happy that Jim has moved on, and I know he keeps an eye out for us, and we sometimes feel his presence, and always tons of love. So Jim, we celebrate your life, and so glad to have shared your wonderful life. Happy trails, and see you on the Rainbow Connection.
That was nice. That was
beautiful.
beautiful.